Thank you so much, Anton. All right, now with all of those announcements out of the way, I would love to invite up our speaker. Let's give Alison a warm welcome. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, everyone. I don't think I've laughed that much during an announcement time in a while. That was very fun. As Nara mentioned, my name is Alison. I'm the lead pastor here at The River. It's so good to be here with you, those of you who are here physically in the room, and also those of you who are tuning in via live stream. Welcome. So today, we're wrapping up a short 3-week sermon series titled How We Church Matters. If you missed either of the first 2 sermons, that's completely fine. Before we dive into today's topic, I'm going to quickly review some of the key points that we've considered so far. But if you have some time, I'd really encourage you to go listen to those sermons. You can find them on our website or on our YouTube channel. There's some really important points in there that I think will be helpful to you as you think about how you would like to engage with church in the months and years ahead. All right, so let's review. The first major point of this sermon series has been that how we go about doing church together matters. By this, I don't mean that there's one right way that we have to figure out and stick to it or else, but rather that the approaches that we embrace have natural implications. The specific ways that we live out our faith week after week after week, they reflect and also shape or reinforce how we understand God, faith, people, community, and so on. And so it's worth approaching our practices with thoughtfulness. This leads me to the next point. Because how we go about doing church together matters, it means that we're invited to be intentional as individuals and as a community in our approaches to faith. One of the primary scripture passages for this series has been Jesus' famous teaching about new and old wineskins. Jesus said, "No one puts new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise, the wine will burst the skins and the wine is lost, and so are the skins. But one puts new wine into fresh wineskins." Jesus' argument here is that for the sake of unconditional love, we should approach our faith with mindfulness and intentionality. Old wineskins for old wine and new wineskins for new wine. This kind of intentionality looks like taking the time to slow down and reflect, to consider context and impact, to embrace nuance and flexibility, both in our individual spiritual journeys and in our communal life together. The third major point of this sermon series has been that if we want to, we get to play a role in shaping the new, more vital form of Christianity that is emerging. Last week, I spoke about Phyllis Tickle's book, The Great Emergence, which describes a repeating historical pattern where massive transitions in the church happen about every 500 years. Each of these periods of upheaval has seen a new, more vital form of Christianity emerge. If the pattern holds, then it means that right now we are currently living through one of these historical moments of upheaval. Tickle called this current period the Great Emergence, in part because whatever is being birthed is still emerging. Living through a period like this can be disorienting and disheartening, but it also means that there's reason for hope. The human story and the Christian story are still unfolding. God's Spirit is still moving in the world, and we are invited to play a part in shaping the new realities that will emerge, both inside and outside of the church. Last week, I spoke about some of the ways that as a community, we're already doing this through our partnership with the Post-Evangelical Collective. I spoke about ways that the River's impact is extending far beyond New York City. The fourth major point of this series has been that for the ways that we are trying to do something new, we need new wineskins. If we are serious about helping to shape new, more vital forms of Christianity, then we need to be intentional about the wineskins or the approaches that we use. For the aspects of our tradition that we want to hold on to preserve, to pass on to future generations, it may be appropriate to use old wineskins. However, for the ways that we're trying to cultivate something new or different, we need to craft new wineskins, new approaches. And this brings me to the fifth and final point. One new wineskin that we are making together is a freedom-based approach to faith. Last week, I spoke about how freedom is a really important value here at the River. This is true because it's the model that we're called to emulate. God's love is rooted in freedom, not control. Because the Bible tells us that experiencing freedom is a key aspect of what it means to be a follower of Jesus. And because unlike control-based approaches, freedom-based spirituality bears good fruit. From our perspective, freedom is absolutely 100% worth it. After all, there is no love without freedom. However, it's important to acknowledge that a freedom-based approach does have some natural implications for what it looks like and what it feels like to go about doing church together. As I mentioned last week, many of us here have been negatively impacted by high control, high demand faith communities. And so that we know that we want to be in environments where there's greater freedom. But we don't always go the step further to consider the ways that a low-control, freedom-based faith community may feel different or unfamiliar or perhaps a bit uncomfortable to us, especially at first. Or to reflect upon the ways that a different approach to faith will end up shaping us differently and also invite us to show up differently. Last week, I shared some examples of what I mean by this, ways that a freedom-based approach invites us to think differently about things like where we find motivation for participation in the absence of pressure or shame, what relationship building looks like when there is less proximity to one another and when vulnerability is not forced, how being given permission to take responsibility for our own spiritual lives can feel both challenging and liberating at the same time, and so on. My hope is that over the next year, we can continue to name and reflect upon some of these dynamics together as a community, that we can work together to make new wineskins that honor freedom and promote the flourishing of all people. One area where post-evangelical churches like ours know that we need new wineskins, but are struggling to figure out exactly what they should look like is in the area of church funding and financial giving. We've identified some of the qualities that we don't want to come into play, things like undue pressure, shame, manipulation, comparison, and conditional belonging. And we've identified some of the qualities that we do want to emphasize, things like freedom, honest, open dialogue, intentionality, meaningful participation, and sustainability. But how do we actually go about doing this well? What kind of language and processes should we use? In part because we're living through a moment of historical upheaval where a new, more vital form of Christianity is emerging, post-evangelical churches like ours are still in the process of figuring this out together. We have a lot of thoughts about what not to do, but what exactly the new approach or approaches should look like, that we don't fully know yet. And so I'd like to invite all of you to join the conversation. As a community, I'd love for us to think about this together, to try out some different approaches together, and ultimately to share what we learn with other churches like ours around the country. Before going any further, I want to name that talking about money, especially as it connects to our own personal financial situations, can feel uncomfortable. This can be true for all sorts of reasons related to the wider culture, our personal histories, and so on. So please know that I will be seeking to treat the topic with sensitivity, and also I'd encourage you to please do what you need to take care of yourself. In addition to the general challenges of talking about money in any setting, it's worth naming that there are some specific challenges that progressive faith communities like ours tend to encounter when discussing finances. One of these challenges is that conversations around church finances can bring up past hurts. Even if we are mindful about approaching and talking about finances in a different, more life-giving way, for many folks who've been harmed in the past, just discussing the topic in a church setting can feel challenging. It can bring up difficult thoughts, feelings, and memories, and it can be easy to make assumptions, to assume that things will be approached in the same harmful ways you experienced previously. If this is you, I'd like to encourage you to be gentle with yourself and others as we have these conversations together, to take care of yourself and to ask clarifying questions. A member of our community came to me recently asking if the fact that they could not give very much to the church meant that they would no longer be able to participate here. The answer is absolutely not. This is not something we have ever said or will ever say. We hope to encourage 100% participation when it comes to financial giving, but your belonging here is not dependent upon if or how much you give to the church. I am so glad that this individual brought this question to me so I could reassure them that this is not our approach. Another challenge that progressive faith communities often face when it comes to discussing finances is difficulty reconciling the idea that God's love is free with the idea that a church costs money to run. Intellectually, it makes sense to people that while God's love is free, money is necessary to pay for everything that goes into running a church. Things like rent, staffing, and standard operating costs. However, on an emotional level, sometimes these truths can feel hard to reconcile. God's love is given freely. Our love for one another is meant to be given freely. And so it can feel like church is something that should be available for free without asking members to contribute financially. I'll get into this more a bit later in the sermon, but for better or worse, in the modern American context, churches are primarily funded through the financial gifts of their members. Because this is the model that we have to operate within, tensions naturally emerge. How do we shape our communal life to reflect God's unconditional love, while also making sure we have the resources that we need to operate sustainably? How do we cultivate a giving culture where participation is encouraged without eliciting feelings of shame or guilt or pressure? All of these tensions are exacerbated by the fact that too often churches talk about financial giving as a condition for receiving God's love and provision. What I mean by that is that it's not uncommon in high control, high demand faith communities to hear messages that tie your level of financial giving to how much you love God or how serious you are about your faith. Messages that claim that how much you give to the church impacts how God feels about you and how God will or will not provide for you in return. This line of thinking is toxic, and it does not reflect the unconditional nature of God's love. God's love is poured out freely without any conditions, including conditions around financial giving. There is nothing that we can do to earn or to lose God's love, including giving more or less to church. Here at the River, we preach about God's unconditional agape love again and again and again, to the point that some people here are like, all right, I get it already. But the truth is that unconditional love is hard to compute. It's hard to receive, and it's hard to extend. It goes against our understanding and experience of the world that we live in. It can be unsettling. And this is why we talk about it so often. It's one thing to understand something intellectually. It's another thing to embody it at the cellular level. Too often, financial giving has been presented as a condition for God's love. And so it makes sense to me that folks who've been harmed by that kind of messaging may need to take a step back, to take some time to rethink what financial giving means to them, to find new life-giving motivations for giving that aren't based in trying to earn God's love or gain belonging in a community. To ask themselves questions like, if financial giving is not a requirement to receive God's love or provision, then why should I contribute? Are there perhaps ways that financial giving can be enriching, both for me and for the life of the church? I and no one else can answer these questions for you. Each person needs to answer them for themselves. However, I can share that personally, I have found that giving generously to the River has been good for me. It has helped me to feel freer in my relationship with money, in how I define for myself what it means to be successful and to have enough. It has felt good to know that I'm directly contributing to the many ways that the River is having a positive impact on the lives of people in our community, on our city, and on the world. It has been meaningful for me to give back to a community that has given so much to me over the years, and to help keep this place alive for future generations. Another challenge that progressive faith communities often face when it comes to discussing finances is the belief that my gift won't make a difference. This belief can come up in any faith community, but is especially present in diverse communities where there are a wide range of incomes reflected. And personally, I completely understand where this belief comes from. There have been times in my life when I was working multiple jobs to get by and knew that I could only afford to contribute a small amount to church. Compared to the larger amounts that others were giving, it felt a bit meaningless. But I want to assure you that this is not the case. We are a small organization, which means that every gift, no matter the size, really matters here. Donating $5 a week, around the price of a cup of coffee, that will make a tangible difference for our budget. On top of that, we truly believe that every dollar counts because every heart counts. You may have heard us say this before, but one of our primary goals around financial giving is 100% community participation. One of the reasons for this is because our vision for community is one where everyone gives and everyone receives in one way or another. A community where everyone contributes, where everyone is invested in helping the community to thrive, is going to feel different than one where only some folks participate. This is why we believe it's important to encourage giving that is intentional, cheerful, and generous. Not to meet some standard of holiness, but as an expression of our collective commitment and support of the church. This next challenge may be River specific, but I suspect that it impacts other progressive faith communities as well. This is the belief that the church doesn't actually need my money. Over the past few years, whenever we've had conversations about finances in settings like community meetings, it was common to hear folks say something along the lines of, I didn't realize that the church needed my money. This may have been because our Sunday meeting space looked really nice, or because the quality of the services and programming is high, or because we have a large staff team. Whatever the reasons, the truth is that while here at the River, we are really, really good at getting as much value as we can out of every dollar, most of our staff members work part-time. And when it comes to our budget, we've been operating for many years now with a structural deficit. What this means is that the amount of money that we receive annually in financial gifts is less than the amount of money that we spend annually for rent, staffing, and operations. This does not mean that we're in danger of closing tomorrow. We've been able to operate this way for quite some time because we've had significant reserves from previous large one-time fundraising campaigns, like our 20th anniversary campaign. However, we can't operate like this indefinitely. For this reason, our goal over the next 2 years, by the end of 2027, is to reach financial sustainability, meaning that the amount that we bring in annually will be equal or greater than the amount that we spend. If you have questions about any of what I've just shared or any of the steps we've already taken or plan to take to move towards this goal, I'd encourage you to stick around for the community meeting after the service today. We'll be getting into all of this in more detail then. But for now, I hope that I've clearly communicated that your financial contributions, no matter their size, do actually make a difference here. They are what make it possible for us to continue operating, to continue offering services and programming, and to continue spreading the message of God's unconditional love in the world. The last challenge facing progressive faith communities that I want to mention today is the belief that my money would be better spent donating directly to justice work. The truth is that there are so many wonderful organizations that you could donate your money to. I am not going to tell you that donating to the River is the only way that you can use your money to have a positive impact on the world, because that's just not the truth. But I can tell you that if you believe in the work that the River is doing, if you think that it's important for churches like the River to exist in the world, then giving financially is one valuable way to be a part of contributing to that work and to supporting the River's long-term sustainability. And beyond financial sustainability, I have really big dreams for what might be possible if we had a bigger budget. The many beautiful ways that we could lean in to giving generously to folks in need, both in our community and beyond. I'd love for us to reach a point where those dreams could become a reality. As I mentioned previously, in the modern American context, churches are primarily funded through the financial gifts of their members. This differs from other religious traditions like Judaism, which use a variety of funding models ranging from voluntary giving to required annual dues. This also differs from other moments in Christian history. The book of Acts tells us that in the early church, all who believed were together and had all things in common. They would sell their possessions and goods and distribute the proceeds to all as any had need. This was pretty radical, sharing everything in common, selling all their possessions and handing over the proceeds to the church to be redistributed among the community. I can speculate as to a number of reasons why this was probably hard to scale as Christianity grew in numbers and spread geographically. Then there was the period of Christian history when the church received imperial patronage. Over time, the church transitioned from a persecuted minority to an openly imperially supported institution, with all the financial, legal, and cultural support that came along with the backing of the Roman Empire. But that period and method of funding did not last forever. After the fall of the Roman Empire, many countries turned to income taxes as a way to support religious organizations. This practice continues on in many European countries today and serves as the primary method of funding for a variety of religious congregations, not just churches. However, early Americans quickly decided to move away from the religious tax model in favor of a stronger separation of church and state. In the 1700s, gambling lotteries were a thriving business used to raise funds for churches, and also things like roads, bridges, colleges, libraries, and so on. Around the time of Prohibition, when gambling lotteries understandably went out of fashion, churches developed other funding methods. One of those was charging congregants to buy or to rent church boxes or pews. This practice helped churches get the funding that they needed, but it also promoted wealth-based hierarchy. The rich had places to sit while everyone else fought for the limited standing room in the back. Renting pews eventually went out of favor for being elitist, for understandable reasons. And from there, many churches began to strongly emphasize the practice of tithing, where each individual is encouraged to give 10% of their income to the church. I share this brief history to illustrate how over time churches have been funded in a variety of ways, and how as culture evolves, as we better understand the impact of our approaches, so must our models and the language that we use. Many years ago, we used to encourage tithing 10% at this church, but in recent years, our approach has shifted. These days, we do not teach that there's one right amount or right percentage that every person should adopt when it comes to financial gifts. Instead, we believe that how much you choose to give is a personal decision that will reflect your own life situation. Our hope is that each of us would take some time to prayerfully reflect on what a meaningful and sustainable gift would look like personally. The Bible tells us to give cheerfully from what we have, not from what we don't have. We do not want people going into debt to give to the church. At the same time, our hope is that every member of our community would find a way to give generously from the heart without any undue pressure or manipulation. While the exact dollar amount will look different for each individual, every gift to the river strengthens our vibrant community and sustains the programs, the services, and the values that we cherish. I mentioned at the beginning of this sermon series that I would share about some of the ways that folks at the river are trying to be intentional about shaping our community. And that I would also invite all of you to consider ways that you can be intentional about your engagement with the river and your own spiritual life in the year ahead. And so with that in mind, I'd like to introduce what we are calling the River Census. We are calling this initiative a census because at the river, everyone counts, and we want everyone to be counted. We want your voices to be heard so that we can know how to best support you in the year ahead. And we want to provide space for each of us individually and collectively to think intentionally about our hopes and dreams for the river in 2026. If this process works well, we're hoping that it can become an annual tradition every fall, a moment where we as a community can pause, reflect, and think intentionally together about the year ahead. After the service today, we'll be handing out census packets, and we'll also have copies available online and at church in the coming weeks. In the census packet, we've included prompts to support your own reflection, a survey to help you share your valuable perspectives, and information around potential ways to engage. So the first physical page of the census packet, which has both a front and a back, this page is for you to keep. This page includes some helpful information about the river, as well as some questions to help you reflect individually around your hopes and intentions when it comes to engaging with the river in the year ahead. Whether you attend in person or online, we recognize that you come to the river seeking something. Maybe there are theological questions you are working through, ways that you hope to experience God, areas you hope to grow, relationships you hope to build, or something else entirely. Whatever it may be, it can help to spend some time reflecting on your desires and considering about how you can be intentional about moving toward them. Please know that these reflections will be just for you. We're not asking you to submit your answers to anyone. The second physical page of the census packet, which also has a front and back, is meant for you to fill out and return at your convenience. You can fill out the physical version, or if you prefer, there's a digital version that you can use. And we don't want you to feel rushed. We want to promote intentionality here. And so we are asking that this form be returned by the end of January, though of course you're welcome to return it sooner if you'd like. One side of this page includes survey questions that we hope will help the staff and the board to better stay in touch with you throughout the year, to better understand your experiences and hopes around river services and programming, to be able to get you information about groups and gatherings and volunteer teams that you might want to learn more about, and to be able to support you in ways that would be meaningful for you. The other side of the page includes an opportunity to make a financial giving pledge for 2026. This is something new that we're trying out this year. One of the ways that we're experimenting and trying to make a new wineskin together. Some of you may be familiar with the idea of a giving pledge from the 20th anniversary campaign. A financial pledge is a commitment to donate to the river at some point in the future, in this case, in 2026. Receiving pledges allows the staff and board to plan the budget for the year ahead and to determine what we can accomplish as a church. If you consider the river your church home, whether or not you are officially a member, we hope that you'll consider making a pledge to give in 2026. Please know, should your circumstances change, your pledge amount can be increased or decreased at any time. Just contact the church staff with any updates. In support of the census process, over the next few months, the staff and the board hope to host a number of smaller gatherings where we can connect and chat in person about our hopes as a community for the year ahead. This will begin with the community meeting after the service today. And I want to say this census process is new. So please let us know how it's going for you. And if needed, we can make adjustments as we're going along. If there are questions or concerns along the way, please do not hesitate to reach out to me or any member of the staff or board. My hope is that creating a dedicated moment to reflect on our hopes and intentions as River community members will be exciting and motivating. That we'll be reminded of all that we love about the river, and that we will sense God's gentle invitations into deeper love, connection, and abundant life. To close today, I'd like to pray for us. This prayer comes from theologian, Christian mystic, educator, and civil rights leader Howard Thurman. Open unto us light for our darkness. Open unto us courage for our fear. Open unto us hope for our despair. Open unto us peace for our turmoil. Open unto us joy for our sorrow. Open unto us strength for our weakness. Open unto us wisdom for our confusion. Open unto us forgiveness for our sins. Open unto us love for our hates. Open unto us thyself for ourselves. Lord, Lord, open unto us. Amen. In just a few moments, we'll move into a time of responding through musical worship. One option during that time is to go and receive prayer from a member of our prayer team in the back of the room. If you came today with something weighing on you, we have members of the church who are specially trained to listen to you and pray with you about whatever may be going on in your life. If this would be helpful to you, feel free to please make your way to the back of the room at any point during the next few worship songs. Another option for how to respond today will be to visit one of the stations around the sanctuary to light a candle. Today is All Souls Day, a day when we are invited to remember and honor our loved ones who have passed away. If it would be meaningful to you, you're invited to light a candle in honor of a loved one and to place it in one of the boxes of sand. As we transition into worship, let me pray a traditional All Souls Day prayer. Eternal rest grant unto them, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon them. May their souls and all the souls of the faithful departed, through the mercy of God, rest in peace.